Okay, gang, we're continuing this conversation about graphical deception, and we talked about this a little bit with media outlets that have been known to purposefully, in some cases, not so purposefully in others, deceive with graphical representation. So that's where we want to talk about the overt versus covert attempts at graphical deception. Is it intentional or is it a mistaken design? And if you're asked to intentionally deceive through a visual metaphor, how do you feel about that? How do you reconcile any personal or ethical objections to a request to overtly or covertly deceive in a message? So on screen you see some examples. One actually tries to break down countries and recipients of Nobel Peace Prizes by number of awardees and graphically represent as a metaphor. So it's actually a solid metaphor, because if you look at Switzerland with 14 awardees, 14 prizes, it is roughly half the size of the 28, from the US block. And it's just slightly smaller than the 15 of the UK. So if you compare the 7 from France, it's roughly half the size of 14 from Switzerland. So the visual metaphor is congruent and it is truthful. On the flip side, you see a Facebook post capture from a few years ago of a situation that arose at a sports stadium where it was discovered that the amount of beer that you could fit in the 20-ounce cup could also fit in the 16-ounce cup. Yeah, slight problem. So that was actually an interesting scenario. If you'd like to look that up, you'll find all kinds of video news reports where they were doing some perception and pouring experiments to show if you filled the 16-ounce cup all the way to the top, you could pour that into the 20-ounce cup and it would fit perfectly, but you didn't have to pay as much if you only bought the 16-ounce, and that's what they were using to fill all the way to the top. Interesting stuff. Anyway, so you have to think about the intent of your design, and if you are trying to purposefully deceive or if you accidentally deceive. But then the more important piece of all of this is putting it all together. So you've just finished creating your instructional visual, that infographic, you submitted those. We'll be working on the peer critiques after we finish up the peer critiques from the videos. That should be wrapping up this week on Thursday. So hopefully on Friday, when I'm flying to Houston, I'll be able to get those critiques put together so that I can send out that announcement as soon as I have Wi-Fi signal when I get to Lake Charles late Thursday night. So look for that late Friday. I'm trying to give you a week to do any of these peer critiques, so just keep that in mind. If you have any questions as you wrap these up, as you begin to look towards the client project, let me know. Many of you have been doing a great job of taking the concepts and applying them realistically. So if you want, look ahead to week 14 and look at the client project description. You can actually start thinking about what you want to work on, and I'll be getting the sign-up sheet for that set up shortly. So keep an eye out for that, as well as an announcement on the client project. But just think about how all of this comes together as opposed to individual segments like layout, color theory, typography, putting it all together for a client. So let's take a look at this week's expectation. Use the on-screen navigation to access another section of this week's overview.